Okay, welcome everybody. I'm very happy to see everybody here. We have people will still be trickling in as we go, but that's okay because we have a little bit of housekeeping to do at the beginning here as we explain what we're up to here today. And if you joined the Facebook group, you know that we're here to talk about the state of music videos in Canada, which is an incredibly broad term, but we're hoping to maybe narrow in a little bit more specifically on what's happening right now in the music video community during COVID-19, and also looking forward where we would like to see music videos go in the future. So that's sort of the overarching thing. I'm sure we'll branch off in all kinds of directions, but we'll try to keep it somewhat within those boundaries. And I should mention that the talk today was organized by We Direct Music Videos, which some of you may already know about. If you're already a member of the Facebook group, you probably know it's a thing. But it was started in the States by a tweet by one of the director by the name of Daniel Kwan, who is part of Daniel's, the directing duo. And that one tweet sort of sparked an organization called We Direct Music Videos, which the U.S. Branch, I suppose, has been a really great opportunity for music video directors and creators to liaison with the industry down there and also form a community and a collective voice. And here in Canada, I'm sure you know that at least what I've experienced and what a lot of directors have experienced, and even people on the music industry side of experience, is that the community of music video creators and the people responsible for pairing those creative with music artists kind of operate in the dark, and we tend to be a bunch of little satellites floating around in space. And the goal of We Direct Music Videos Canada, which now comes under the umbrella of We Direct Music Videos, is kind of to try to make that community a little bit less amorphous. So to give us an opportunity to actually talk to each other. A lot of people who make music videos don't talk to other people who make music videos. And then a lot of people who make music videos don't have an opportunity to hear from the industry as well and have their concerns heard, as well as hear the industry concerns in a way where it's not just simply, one-on-one relationships. So Emma, Alon, and Seb, who are all in the moderators here on the panel today, do a lot more work than I do for We Direct Music Video Canada, but we've already had a couple meetups in Toronto and Vancouver, and we immediately found that was an incredibly, it was a relief to actually be exposed to other people that make music videos, want to make music videos, and to share experiences. And so clearly there's a demand, and we also would like to see and foster a future where we can continue to make music videos, where artists can continue to get great music videos made and funded. And I think that without some sort of group that sort of can collect people's experiences and put ideas forward to funding bodies, to the industry, and out to other creators, that's very difficult to do. So that's what we're hoping to do. That's what I'd like to see happen. I mean, I assume we're all here because we love music videos, and we'd like to see music videos continuing to be made in Canada at the level that they are already being made at, and maybe even opportunities to make more with more funding and able to make more videos for more artists. So that's kind of the gist of what we'd like to do. Did I miss anything, Seb, Alon, Emma? No? Great. So
That
today,
sounded great.
okay, good. So today, I mean, I think that, it's no secret that on both sides of the industry, the filmmaker side as well as the music industry side, we tend to think music videos are fairly important, but we never really talk about why or how. And we often don't talk about the mechanics of how that all works. So the way today is going to work is we've collected some people from all walks of, or all sides of the industries. There's from the music side, we brought together Kelly Anglin, who's an A&R at Warner Music Canada. That's Kelly. Dirk McMillan, marketing manager at Sony Music Canada. Cara Purto, who is a project and music licensing manager at 604 Records. Crispin Day is an artist manager and music producer with Good People Artist Management. And then on the filmmaking side, we have freelance producer Michaela Fasulo. And I already mentioned Sebastian, Emma, and Alon, who are all producers and directors that do work with We Direct Music Video. And Peter Huang, another very talented music video director. So we're hoping to represent all the voices, but of course, most importantly, we'd like to hear your questions. So we'll start off with some general discussion. I'll ask questions specifically geared to our panelists. And then at the end, we will be putting together your questions that you can ask at any time in the chat box here in Zoom or over on Facebook. And I believe Seb and Alon will be, is that right? They will be monitoring both Facebook and the Zoom questions. So at any time, if you think of a question you want to ask, throw it in the chat box. If it's relevant to something that we're talking about, Seb and Alon will interrupt me. But just for the sake of time, we'll ask that the questions do go into the chat box, and then we will ask them. And if there's follow-ups, feel free to ask those in the chat box as well. And we'll see how many we can get through. So without further ado, I'd like to start off a little bit general with the role that music videos play within the music industry. I think that a question that that a lot of directors and a lot of creatives have is exactly how important music videos still are. And this is something that a lot of people ask. There was, when MuchFact disappeared a few years ago, one of the things that kept coming up is, do people even watch music videos anymore? Are they as important as they were? And a big case that the Bell made from the TV side is that we don't play these on television anymore, so they're no longer relevant in that sense. But at least from a creative standpoint, it seems like they are increasingly relevant. So I guess throwing it right out to some of our panelists, starting maybe with Kelly and Dirk, I wanted to ask you from the industry side how important music videos still are, how and the role that they play in the branding and marketing of your artists. And then I suppose if once we've covered that, if you can bring that around to whether or not anything has changed as a result of COVID-19 and the fact that nobody is able to make things at the scale of production they are. Has that changed their importance? Is there more happening online? And we'll go from there. So maybe we'll start with Kelly.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's still important. You know, we use the rollout of our singles, that those video assets that we have are super important to be able to include in marketing, even though we don't have, you know, an official broadcast outlet like a Much Music anymore. People are consuming music online more and more, so it's still relevant. And I think that even more so now in the times that we're in with COVID, that people are still consuming music, and you know, they want to see their artists. And so I think still having those visual assets when we roll out our music is still a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. Dirk?
To touch on to Kelly's point, these videos, it's not just for like, you know, broadcast or having them up on YouTube, but we use them across, you know, multiple platforms for advertising, whether it's Spotify Canvas or Instagram, TikTok. So it's more than just a music video, you're also using it as an advertising piece, which is also very, like, you know, it's very key for an artist to have something like this, for it to be able to show branding or personality, and also just as a discovery piece on YouTube, and for people to engage with. A music video can change someone's opinion on a song. Like I've had that experience where listening to something and it being like, I like the song more because the video is, you know, creative or just really cool. And yeah, I feel like that's changed a lot in my personality for different things like that. And also right now with everything that's happening, it's been very difficult to actually get, you know, music videos done, whether that's, I know I had a few artists that have done them in their homes and whatnot, but also leaning more towards animation and getting more visualizers done. They're not as engaging as an actual video of the artist, but still just a key component that complements the music and you can use for advertising.
Right. That's interesting. You mentioned there that it's difficult to make something as engaging. I wonder, Cara and Crispin, if you can speak to whether or not you have tried to continue to put out visual media during COVID and what those challenges have taught you about the importance of that media and the kind of stuff that you are looking for in general. So go ahead. We'll start with Cara.
Okay. I've actually put out a few videos. The first one I put out, we did stock footage with a little bit of home footage mixed into it. Made it like kind of vintage looking, really complemented our entire branding of the artist, and that was cool, but as Dirk said, not quite as cool as having the artists themselves. And then another video that I did, we had, I don't know if anyone knows Johnny Jansen. He does a lot of great animation. He took video footage of the lead singer singing the song and then superimposed his mouth onto horror film footage to the beat of the music. And it's actually one of the best videos we've done in a really long time. And it was like way cheaper than doing a regular music video. It's super engaging. So it's like, we just have to be extremely creative with how we do it. And if you can do animation and things like that and still somehow incorporate the artist without it just being like, hey, we're all at home dancing in our living rooms, which is what most people are kind of doing right now. It's pretty great if you can do that. So that's what we've been doing with ours. And I mean, we are lucky because 604 has its own sound stage. So, and it has a full green screen on it. So we also just filmed a video with just the artists who are sisters. They were together, and then the director and his roommate in the soundstage, so they could keep 6 feet apart. We could still get a visual. We did have to dramatically change the treatment so that it would be done with 2 people as opposed to an entire crew. But it's just being creative and using the resources that you have. And I mean, another problem is not just like you can't see people, it's that you can't rent gear. So it's like, if you don't have cameras or lighting, or you're gonna have to find a way to make that work and still have everything look good.
Yeah, definitely. Crispin, have you tried to make anything during the shutdown?
So I got really lucky with one artist that Alon's actually doing a video for. We got the whole concept for this video treatment was basically insane animation. So it was one day of shooting. We got that done, and Alon's working on that now. But I have another artist, Jeremy Albino, and we've been doing like 3 times, 4 times more videos than we ever have before. Like I'd say during COVID, when I started like using analytics a lot more than I ever used to. And we found that video engagement's like way higher. I mean, maybe this has always been the case, but video engagement on social media has been like way higher. So we started doing things like IGTV videos, and so he's got like a little gimbal set up and a recording rig, and we've put out like a video a week for like 2 months. But in terms of full-scale video production, it's kind of tough during COVID times. Like I said, we got really lucky, and we've got a video in the works for an artist they have a release coming up. But there's been like a really strong effort to figure out DIY methods of getting, usable video footage that we can use, because it's such a valuable asset. And I think that's becoming even more clear during COVID times. It's like the engagement you get from video content is just so much higher that, yeah, it's a weird time. It's going to be interesting to see how people pivot to get that level of content for their platforms without access to the professionals that we need, or finding alternate ways of working with them with animation and like some of the video ideas that have been talked about here with the horror movies and little
Yeah.
cutouts of things. And
Well, I wonder, one thing I wanted to throw out to the directors was this idea of trying to make something cheap and on a smaller scale is something that we obviously get a lot of call for long before COVID-19 started. Is there, other than the obvious creative challenges that it poses, do you think that this slight pivot that everyone has had to do towards smaller scale, smaller crews, more animation, and maybe more content with less money, is that something that you're worried is going to continue post COVID, and maybe that scale of production, that's those bigger videos with a larger crew and more ambitious videos, might be harder to convince people to make? And maybe we'll start this with Peter. I know that you managed to take one of your high budget videos and kind of rework it for COVID, which was quite fun.
The Unreal one? I
Yeah.
wouldn't call that high budget necessarily. But,
I was going to say that one was high budget. Oh shit.
No, definitely not. But I think there's a lot of people who are just waiting to get back to things. I know a lot of execs and producers and even like management are just waiting for things to go back to normal, because they know that there's actually no replicating a high budget video, and people are going to want to see that content. They're going to want to see artists that appear larger than life and be really cool and colorful and poppy and all that stuff, or even just sort of like crazy cinematic visuals. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff that feels a little bit more low budget, and I think nowadays there's definitely a little bit of a leeway where it's like, oh, if it's shot on an iPhone, that's okay. But I think once you're able to start shooting again, people are still going to want to see slicker visuals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Michaela, have you made anything during the shutdown? And in terms of the type of call that you're getting for content, does it tend to be just give us whatever you can get now and with your resources?
So me and Angelica Milish, who's a director that I work with a lot, we actually did a video where pre-production started while COVID was happening, and we're right now in post-production. So the way we kind of approached it was, at first, when things were a little lighter in terms of how serious things were getting, we all planned, okay, we're just going to shoot at the artist house with like minimal crew. But then when things really started to get much warmer, we ended up, I produced from home, Angelica directed from home, and our DP was the only one to go to the artist house. So we had to be really creative with how that could work, and it was a really interesting challenge. So like figuring out the logistics, like, okay, we need to find a way for Angelica to be able to see the monitor at all times. And we need for there to be a way for me to Uber the guys food for lunch and Uber them craft. And like, it was super fun, and it was low budget because of just the circumstances. But I think kind of like what Kara was saying, it's like, because these times are, the budgets are kind of in the air and the circumstances are in the air, it's like as creatives and as producers, we're challenged to still make something good with the resources we have. So we actually reached out to this really awesome editor who's from Kazakhstan, and he's like, and we're really relying, like we said, we're relying mostly on the crazy editing that he's doing to make this video as entertaining as possible. So yeah, we've managed to do that. But then also the project that Crispin and Alon were talking about, we're working on post for that as well, and like just watching that come to fruition is really exciting as well. So definitely just a lot of post-production, and then just trying to do these smaller jobs has been the thing keeping me busy from my end.
There you go. Thank you.
I was gonna jump in and just say that, to echo what everyone else has been saying, but also just to add to that I think we're seeing sort of a period of time where everybody on the production spectrum, on the commercial production spectrum, is trying to figure out how to do things really really in a very light form with like skeleton crews, or doing it in a very sort of budget conscious and dirty kind of way. And I feel like for us with music videos, we're so used to that already. Like that's something that we've always been doing. We've kind of been having to do that for a while. So I think we're, as an industry, in a weird way, the most prepared for this in terms of having to quote unquote think creatively. Because I've been getting briefs for the last 10 years where people are like, we don't have a lot of money, so we really need to be creative about this. That's not new. So I think that's been something that I've been seeing a lot more of, is people sort of catching up to the idea that like you can do a lot with the resources that you have. And then also to add to what Michaela was saying in terms of post, I think this is a good time if you are a multidisciplinary director or a creator and you can do some animation work. I mean, I think it's great, and you will stay busier now, but I don't think I don't think we're creating a new normal by any means. I think as soon as things kind of start to loosen up, restrictions start to loosen up, I think we're going to start to see production value ramp up again, because I think we're going to get tired of seeing the same kind of Zoom style music videos. And so I think that's going to change. I wouldn't worry too much about it, things staying like this.
That's good to hear. Are there any sort of COVID making music videos now during COVID-19 related questions in the chat box that we should cover before we move on? We'll come back. We'll loop back around at the end anyway.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions, but there's, I guess there's a question about production that I think might be worth talking about now, which is coming from Lester. He was saying, if anybody on the panel is aware, this might be more of a question for Seb or even for Michaela if she's been aware of any of this, but has there been government or body official advice on production companies following as to when shoots would officially be resuming post-COVID-19? Given that, for example, British Columbia government has suggested that TV and film production won't resume until later in the summer, are we the same? I'm assuming he means in Ontario, I guess. Are we following the same guidelines, or are the rules different for smaller independent shoots? So I don't know if anybody, Sebastian or anybody on the production side has something we can add to that.
I mean, I can speak a little bit for BC. I think every province has a little bit of a different situation going on. The short answer is there is no answer to that question, but there are different groups like CPOC, which is the equivalent of CPAT in Ontario, but in BC. They've been working really hard on some proposed guidelines and having discussions with stakeholders at the provincial level. But really all they're doing is like saying, this is what we think we can do for commercial productions, which are crews of approximately 50 people and up, and how that would resume going back into it. But again, it's also a phased approach where it's like starting with small crews and minimal interaction between people on set, keeping social distancing and all that kind of thing. And eventually phasing back into kind of the traditional film set. But there's no dates in mind. It's just, it's what can we propose, essentially.
And I've seen dates kind of floating around, but they've changed. Like I remember hearing from someone saying they were expecting to get permits would start, you'd be allowed to start pulling permits as of June. I don't know, there was some date that was thrown around, and I think that has shifted potentially. So I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I feel like those dates have been shifting as well. So I don't know if there is a specific date.
Great. I'm wondering, maybe this is a good opportunity to take a step back, because I think as the industry has had to do this very quick pivot, and this is a question maybe for Kelly and Dirk as well as Cara, but what is your standard method for finding creatives to work on these projects? And this would be pre-COVID-19. How did you find your artists? And given that maybe there are some more post-heavy things that you can do in the meantime, are you finding yourself having to find new artists, and what is that process like? And I'm sure for a lot of the creatives and the directors that are watching today too, they would be very curious, how on earth do you find your directors? And if they have something to offer, if you've got a brilliant animator or post-production wizard, how can they find a way to connect with the industry side? And we'll start with Dirk, and then Kelly, and then Cara.
Yeah, no problem. Mine is, sorry, just put myself on mute. My process is I usually put together like a mood board for each artist that I work for, and then it's like just working with them to find a creative. Sometimes it's putting forward some people that I have relationships with or previously worked with. Other times they have friends, or it's really just like searching online and finding reference videos and seeing who did those, whether it's someone in Canada, someone in the US, even UK directors. And then it's just like sometimes it's cold calling. Sometimes, again, they are a previous relationship that you can just go back to and use again. That's always key because there are so many great people in Canada. But sometimes it's challenging as well because there's a certain style that the artist wants that's very unique to a certain director that we don't have access to in Canada. But there's always so many new people coming up in Canada that like it's always hard to know about. So it's good that we're having this conversation because there's a lot of new people that I've never worked with or I've not known until coming onto this call. So it's really exciting to like meet new creatives and whatnot. But that's usually just my process. And then it's just reaching out, getting treatments written. And then sometimes the ones that you wanted to work with don't always write the best treatments. And then it's finding somebody else. So it's always a challenge sometimes, but sometimes it comes very easily. Again, it just depends on the artists themselves and what they're looking for.
That's great. Kelly, we hear this a lot, but it's something that I didn't hear until after making music videos for a number of years, is that artists and labels watch a lot of videos and they look at the names of the people that made those videos, and those are the people that they reach out to if there's something really amazing that catches an artist's eye. And is that something that you do as well? And do you have another method for finding artists?
Yeah, that's definitely a method, and I find that the artists will dig into videos quite a bit and want to know who's done that video, and that could be the path that we take. But similar to what Dirk was saying, sometimes it's relationships that an artist already has with a director. There's an idea that they have, and it's just about working with somebody that they're comfortable with and just fleshing that idea out. And other times, an artist may not have any real strong creative direction and just looking for us to pitch it to various various directors. And so we tend to tap into, people that we have worked with and people that we do want to work with. And again, what Dirk was saying, there's always, room for additional directors to be added to our list of go-tos. So I just encourage everyone to just reach out to the labels and start building those relationships, because we can tend to get stuck with, just people that we are normally doing business with, but we're always looking to expand. So it really is different. It depends on the artist and ideas that they have, or we're just going wide and just trying to get creative from others.
Great. And I guess a follow-up question I have would be, at what point should an artist or should a director or producer reach out to a label, and what should that outreach look like? At the beginning of their career, or once they have something to show and say, hey, here's my work. If you're ever looking for anybody, what do you look for?
I think it's both, because we tap into people that are just starting out their careers, that we want to just create a lot of content, but it might be on a smaller budget, as well as directors that are more established for, the bigger budget official videos. I would say as soon as you feel confident and you're able to show us what you can do and want to start a relationship, I would say reach out.
Great. Cara, go ahead.
We're a little different because we're smaller. So our budgets are generally smaller. Like we'll occasionally have a bigger budget, and we'll go to bigger directors. Like we have Emma used to work for 604. That's kind of where she first started out. So sometimes we'll go directly to Emma, or we'll ask Emma if she has anyone she can recommend. We have an in-house video editor who also can film. So we'll have him do smaller stuff and do all the editing for us. And then we kind of have also got these we like young up and coming, because we're going with smaller budgets. We're not going to ask someone like Emma to do a $3,000 video for us. It's just we wouldn't. So we do need to find those new young up and coming guys and girls who are hungry. They want to work. They know people in Vancouver. It's a very small knit community in Vancouver. I'd say even more so than Toronto. There's way less to choose from over there. So it's if you have one guy direct, his friend will co-direct, and then he's also a director, and he's also a producer, and then he'll bring him in on the next video, and then that guy will direct, and then his roommate. So it's kind of this network in Vancouver of small up and coming people who are all working on all the films. So one's producing one, one's directing one, then they're switching places, then they're like, so it's a little different than it would be on like a bigger budget major label or one of our like say Mariana's Trench videos compared to like one of my small indie artists. And then we have like they said, artists, a lot of our artists are friends with videos directors. It's all this creative hub that they have going on. So like that video I was talking about with Johnny Jansen, he's really good friends with a lot of our artists because he's been in Vancouver and done a lot of stuff for us. So we'll pull him in. And we're also like constantly getting cold emails. I get emails all the time from directors being like, hey, here's my reel. And if I think it's good and they're in Vancouver or where most of our artists are, I'll send it to the whole staff. And then we'll probably like reach out to them if we think we liked anything of theirs. Like we're very open to that. But as of right now, it's this little tight-knit like team of people we keep going to, but totally open to new stuff.
Great. One of that's sort of maybe a segue into one of the reasons why We Direct Music Video Canada kind of got together in the first place, and that was in the wake of the loss of sort of one of our major funding bodies, which was MuchFact. A lot of questions kind of cropped up in the wake of losing that fund, both around what was working and what wasn't working in the industry in and around that particular grant, but also about challenges in getting music videos funded here in Canada. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is that music videos tend to be in this weird gray area of funding, and specifically cultural funding, in that a lot of the sort of government money that goes to the various funding agencies is specifically directed into the music industry or the filmmaking community. And because music videos fall in the middle, they're sort of in this odd gray area. I'm wondering if I can ask about some of the challenges in getting music videos made and finding the resources to actually fund those videos. Maybe we'll start with from the industry side and then open it up to some of the creatives here on the panel. But what are the challenges that you've had in getting videos funded, and what did it look like pre-MuchFact when there was a sort of a lot of money from one single fund versus what it looks like now, and what would you like to see in the future, I guess, is the third part of that question. So and I'll open that up to anybody from the industry side, if that wants to chime in. Dirk, Kelly, or Kara. Kelly, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, obviously we had MuchFact, and that was beneficial to all of us, as well as CMT funding. With both of those gone, that definitely creates a challenge, and it stretches our dollar on our end. Other funding that has come up, I know the BC Music Fund is available for videos if you're a BC-based artist and the production is done in BC. We've obviously got OMF in Ontario. I know that fund has been scaled back, but there is still funding available there. So it definitely, without that funding, it definitely stretches what we can do. And it's always been helpful to have that funding available to us.
Does anyone feel both, I suppose factor two is element, those funds tend to be more broad, funding the, an article, everything from the release to the video content to everything. Dirk, do you feel that that a dedicated fund would be more useful, or from a label side, do you prefer that these funds kind of come in a general way and then you can break it up in how you see fit?
Well, on the major label side, it's a lot easier because we have the money and the access to all that stuff. Whereas I feel for the indie artists, where even when MuchFact was there, or even Factor, like MuchFact would cover most of your video, but Factor doesn't always. And for an artist to have to dip into their own pocket and pull out another $15K to have like a really beautiful video done, that's challenging. And having a visual component for your release, I feel is, you know, we've talked about this, very important. And even with some of the funding that you have now, it's just not sufficient enough for what is, you know, what is needed, even to pay you guys, you know, and everyone's like, you know, going with a shoestring budget, and you're trying to make it work. And you guys are like, at the end of the day, when this is your job, you're like, we don't have enough money to pay your bills. So I feel like that's always a challenge. And then like not having much fact, I get, you know, that there's nowhere that you can actually view these videos, but I just feel that, you know, whether it's a Netflix or I don't know, Hulu or, you know, Amazon Prime, like someone needs to get into this market of being able to, you know, maybe it's going to that road and having these playlists, if you want to call them, set up with music videos and having a countdown and all that stuff, because I still think that people really enjoyed those experiences. I know I loved much music growing up. I didn't, you know, have cable. So whenever I was babysitting, that was my time to like sit down and explore and listen to new music, whether that was much loud or just much music. So I still think it's a great discovery piece. And I just feel like there's so many different avenues that can be created to house these videos. That's just a thought, but hopefully somebody can actually achieve that and get that going as well. Just a random thing.
That's great. I know one thing that we're really, oh, sorry, Michaela, did you have something to add to that as well? As from the, I guess a question I would have is for the creatives, what does it look like from a producing standpoint, trying to get these videos made versus if there was a central fund which could be applied to, which would go, you know, video specific, as opposed to, you know, budgets already being in place, whether it be 5,000, 10,000, 500. How would that help you, or what have you seen? I'm not sure. Were you, if you were making videos on both during Much Fact and after, what that looked like?
So for me, I actually started working in the industry long after Much Fact was a thing. So I feel like that has worked in my benefit in some cases, in the sense of I never had what the industry I'm working in to, like, I didn't have to compare it to anything else that I had been in before. So I actually am not even familiar with the challenges that came with and how that would benefit me now, other than I have more money and now I have more flexibility to treat the crew right, to give the creative more, you know, whatever it needs to do its best. Basically, because I kind of started with the low budgets and have slowly grown to the bigger ones, I've really learned to squeeze everything out of that dollar as possible. And then one thing that is really important to me is just like, you have to have respect for the team just as much as you do for the project. Because if you don't have one the same as the other, I feel like something's going to fall through and something isn't going, like the project as a whole isn't going to do the job that it's supposed to, or you're going to lose respect in the industry somehow. So I feel like no matter what, those low budgets will always have its place, because I think that kind of like what Kara was saying, you're always going to have those artists who don't have as much money as somebody else. And that's something I have a lot of respect for that, for those that are willing to put the money into promoting themselves. But you will have those young people just coming out of university. Like I was one of those people who are going to be willing to take those smaller budgets and to do whatever they can with it and hopefully make something really amazing. But I hope I'm still on the right track. I kind of lost you a little bit towards the end of your question, but I hope that answer kind of made sense.
Yeah, no, of course it does.
I wanted to jump with a follow-up question from the chat, because I think it's relevant to this that Connor just brought up, and maybe something that the producers, again, maybe Michaela or even Seb can follow up on this, but do you think, so there's a question from Connor O'Brien, who's an AD and really talented AD, so shout out to Connor. Does a dedicated fund run the risk of creating a subconscious preference for certain types of work, which I assume he means, I'm not really sure what he means by certain type of work, but I guess a specific type. Should we avoid going down the Much Fact path and again being vulnerable to having a financial rug pulled out at any point? So I guess the point he's making is that you know, we had much fact, we sort of relied on it, and then all of a sudden it was gone, and then you just saw this sort of big dip in the amount and the quality of videos being produced. And then do we want to sort of create another, do we want to risk doing that again? And I guess my question to this would be, A, yes, do we want to do this again? And B, what is the alternative? Like, if we didn't have a government funded source, then where would the money be coming from? So the first part of the question, I guess, is Sebastian, Michaela, maybe even Peter can jump in on this. Does a dedicated fund, if we were to somehow figure out another dedicated fund for music videos, are you worried that we're going to just run the same risk that we did with Much Fact, which is it might just disappear one day and then we're kind of left?
Can I actually speak to this?
Yeah.
Because I thoughts on it. I think that we in Canada do need some cultural funding for this. I think we get overwhelmed by the states, and otherwise it's just we're a small country and we need we need some sort of Much Fact cultural Canadian Heritage Fund money to sort of compete a little. And that does exist, and it's going into Factor, and it's going into BC Creative, BC Music and stuff like that. So it is going out there. I think that Much Fact had its problems, certainly, and certain things I don't miss about it, like Thursday nights, just last minute treatment writing. If anyone has done that, it was just like an overwhelming Thursday night emergency every time there was a grant deadline where you'd write 5 treatments in a night. And yes, it does risk, it's a difficult thing to do, any of these grants, any of the cultural funding, how we give it out, and it will tend to find bias maybe here and there. It's hard to say what merits getting the money and what doesn't. That's a difficult thing. But that being said, I think that the benefits of something like Much Fact were really big in that it was a type of grant that at least pretended on the surface level to take into account the filmmaking side of it too, because it was awarded to either production companies and the music and the song a little bit more so than just Factor, which is entirely towards the music and that promotion in there too. I think that you're going to find that there is this gap of filmmakers who aren't able to get over that like $10,000 little hump that there is right now. And there's an area that's lacking now that I think I benefited from. And I think there's probably a lot of other directors without Bravo Fact and Much Fact that are missing that like notch up. Maybe we're just not able to get there with those $30,000 sort of grants. I think if something did come back, it would be interesting to look at something like what Prison Prize has done with the MVP grant, which I think is really, really valuable in the way that it gives out money. It's small, really small right now, but it's turning out some really cool creative videos.
Yeah, and I was going to, just to add to that, I was going to say that the some of the biases that, you know, Much Fact fell under criticism for being more of the commercial type of work that was more trying to support the artists that they knew were going to play well on television and maybe ignoring some of the indie artists. And they did a lot of work to try to fight back against that by creating smaller grants and giving them to newer emerging artists as well. Especially towards the end, I found that as they stopped playing music videos on television and maybe the gatekeepers were not keeping such a close eye, they did try to make sure a lot of that money got funneled to more independent artists and unheard of artists. But we have a very good model for arts funding in this country that does avoid those kinds of biases with things like the Arts Councils, which is a rotating jury of industry as well as creatives. So they try to balance some of that by having people on both sides of the industry. And that's what Prison Prize did with the MVP grant too, is the idea. And again, that's a very small amount of money compared to what Much Fact had at their disposal. They were giving out almost in 2 rounds of Much Fact the entire yearly budget for MVP. But, and you could also argue that the fact that there's private money through RBC involved, even though it's arm's length, that's somewhat problematic. But on the other hand, I think that a lot of the concerns with having a central body funding music videos can be addressed by looking at other cultural funding in Canada that already works, like the Arts Councils, which also, you know, operate on 3 levels from federal down to very local. So there's definitely models that the government could look at. I think it would just require the music video community and the industry side the music
I feel like
industry.
YouTube should be someone who contributes, because that's where all the music videos are going and they're making a lot of money off of them. I just, like, if you're going to look at how much fact work you were talking about, the stations needed it because they were playing the videos. So now it's like, well, YouTube should probably have some sort of, you know, that's somewhere that I think we could go. And I definitely think, like, for a small label like us, like, not having much fact means I don't make that video. Like, it's not even a, like, oh, what do we do now? It's like, if much fact was a $20,000 to $30,000 video, I've got $5,000 now to make a video. Go. Like, I don't have that other option. So it did make a huge difference for us. Like, we still get MEC and all of that, but that's a general big budget thing that accounting takes, and they put it towards where the artists need to recoup. And I don't even get the option of being like, what goes where for my artists. It's like, I have to figure out how we're paying for this, and my whole budget is probably, you know, what Dirk says for like 2 videos is my entire marketing budget for an entire album, right? So, and then I feel terrible being like, hey, can you make me a $2,000 or a $5,000 video? And you guys are like, that's not even gonna pay for like half a crew. And I'm like, okay, cool. I gotta ask some guy who's gonna do it for nothing. And then, you know, you feel like you're taking advantage of these young guys. So that's, I guess, twofold. If we could get YouTube to like start a fund, I think that would be the best place to go, because that's where your videos are going.
I love that. I've been saying that for a while too, but I don't know how realistic that is. But I think it's a great little thing to sort of get everybody on board with, because I think that's part of what we're trying to do with We Direct Music Videos, is sort of figure out this collective voice that we can all have together, and then maybe that's an avenue, you know, with a collective voice that we can all go to and talk to YouTube about. Sorry, that definitely has come up in our discussions in the past about what role does YouTube play, in the same way that Much Music played in the past.
Yeah, it's much like what Dirk said in terms of the streaming services who would benefit from the content, and some of whom are currently benefiting from the content that labels and artists and directors are making that gets seen. And there are a lot of ad dollars that are getting made on that content, and very little of that money actually filters itself down to on an artist level, but then further down to the creatives, which unfortunately is part of a much larger discussion that we can have another day, which is just that how on earth do you police streaming services to help fund cultural content? That's something that Canada has been struggling with since streaming services started to become the dominant platform. But that is also a very good place to open it up maybe to some of the questions that have come up in the chat. And see if we can address some people's specific questions with the time that we have left. Is there?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions here. Do you want me to just sort of fire through them?
Go for it.
So yeah, if everybody can sort of do your best to sort of answer, if this is a question that's directed at you, do your best to sort of answer quickly, because we do have quite a few of these to go through. So, okay, sorry, this one we already gone through. So I have a specific question for Peter from Joa L. During COVID, how do you try to complement all the storytelling that you want to do or share after COVID? I don't know if that's a clear question. I don't know if Peter, you want to ask a clarification for that and see if Joa can clarify his question. But he's saying, during COVID, how do you try to complement all the storytelling that you want to share? If I were to interpret that question, I would say, like, how are you tackling the storytelling in your work now versus before COVID?
Yeah, I think luckily I was supposed to be actually shooting a TV series at this point, but it's been on hiatus indefinitely. And so I've been lucky that I've been able to develop and write. As far as I'm concerned, from everything that I've heard, development when it comes to TV and film is in high gear right now. And unfortunately, I don't think there's much else to do when it comes to music videos. So if there is some sort of creative outlet, I would say writing is the best way to do it right now. And then once everything's back, then you just kick off and shoot whatever you can.
Sweet. This is, I guess, a question to everyone. And I think we kind of sort of addressed this, but the question from Connor is COVID-19 the death of traditional music videos? It feels like this ground is lost to other formats that will never be won back. I personally disagree, but I don't know if anybody else has. Do you guys feel like? So.
I disagree. I've seen, like, everyone's seen this, like, all of the COVID commercials all sound exactly the same. I think we're all going to get sick and tired of anything that gets made in this format. I think the first few that get released kind of get a lot of buzz and have some novelty to them, and to a degree as well. Like, music videos are a lot about novelty, really, to cut through the noise that's out there. But after a while, I think the interest kind of wanes. That's my thought.
I think just to bounce off of that, I think definitely it has allowed us to do certain things that we wouldn't have done before and try new creative outlets for music videos and for other kinds of content. But ultimately, with the stuff that we were doing before COVID, I don't think that the stuff we're doing now is, for lack of a better word, better, but it is different. And like the word you said, there's a lot of novelty to it.
Yeah, we've had a few productions that we're just waiting until we get the green light that we can actually shoot. So it's not like we've said, well, we're not doing it anymore. We're just waiting till we get, to a time when everyone feels comfortable to do it, and we've been given the green light to do it. In the meantime, we're just trying to shoot content either to fill the gap or content that we feel is still cool. And we've had artists and directors try to think outside the box and creating a cool idea and just being, different in how they execute it. But in terms of like the bigger budget official videos, they're not going away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one that ties back a little bit to one of the things that we were talking about earlier, which is that when MuchFact did exist, the mandate was just to make Canadian videos stand up on an international level and look as professional and as big budget, and be able to have some of the production value of large, big budget American productions. Is, I guess, a question I would have, and I don't want to take too much time away from the panel's questions, but is that something we still need to think about? Canadian videos looking and, using the creative talent we have here, and then giving it a little bit of a boost with some extra resources to compete internationally. Is that something that labels think about? Maybe Dirk, if you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the videos should be, to a US standard, but there's a lot of artists that are up and coming that have a really, that like DIY feel to them, and they're like blowing up online. And then it ties into, like, I know we're in this world of TikTok right now, and a lot of the content on there, like whether you're advertising on there or whatnot, like people want to see this more organic video versus a really polished music video. I know that's kind of like in the moment right now, but there's like no lack of like putting out a beautiful polished video that's like very commercial. I think people still like to see those, but globally there's a lot of videos that are coming out that are not done that in that way, and people are really relating to them, which is kind of in a different zone than what we have been in previously before COVID-19 and with COVID-19. But yeah, it's something that I don't think will go away, but there's a ton of stuff that's coming up that is not traditional but is working as well.
Great. Alon, another question.
Yeah, so I have a few still. So this one, where is it? So this one seems to be a popular one in this thread, so I'll just ask this one. Let me just get to it, sorry. Is there a potential opportunity for WeDirect music videos to become a non-for-profit that applies private funding through corporate sponsors? And I think the answer to that would be it's potential, but I don't have the answer for that right now. I think that that's definitely something that we want to look into in the future, and also trying to find sort of our place and what our direction is in relationship to what WeDirect music videos in the US is doing as well. So because we're not 100% autonomous as well, but it's for right now we're hoping to sort of just create that community and be the voice, and then if we can hopefully grow this into something that could potentially be the official voice for that could apply for private funding. Yeah, I think that's a possibility, but I don't have any I don't know if Emma wants to jump in on this at all, but I don't. Yeah,
I would say that we've said from the beginning with this, we don't really have any sort of idea necessarily what this could be or what we can do with it, but we want to try and do community. So one of the things we wanted to ask everyone, and you can put it in the chat here or on the Facebook page after, But if there is something you'd like to see, or you think that a community like We Direct Music Videos could do to improve your life as a filmmaker, or your life as a person who works in music videos in whatever capacity that is, just let us know, because maybe there's opportunity to do that. That's what we're trying to be here for. So just drop a line.
Nice. Any more questions, Alon?
Yes. All right. So for this is a question specifically for the record labels. So maybe we can get Kelly to maybe tackle this first. This is from Michael Makaroff in the chat. He's asking for label reps. I've heard recently that the amount established artists and labels are willing to pay for a music video is dropping. Of course, it's going to fluctuate, but he's curious about the general maximum and minimum amounts that specifically established artists and record labels are willing to pay for a music video.
Don't know if I can talk about what dollar amounts we attach
Right.
to our video budgets for
That's fair.
established artists. So,
But maybe in general terms, do you see a trend towards cheaper videos and more of them? Or is there a sense that there's still a place for high budget, one-off cinematic pieces, not needing to hone in on any specific artists? In your time working in music videos, have you seen a maybe small, trend towards smaller budgets, or has it remained the same?
yeah, I think across the board, budgets in general have come down, not just music videos. So, those have been targeted as well. So yeah, overall, budgets have come down. We're still doing, bigger budgets for, that more, like you said, polished official video for more established artists. But I think in general, all the music industry labels can probably attest to this, that budgets overall have come down, and it's not just videos.
And do you find that to be just following the general trend of the amount of money that is circulating in the industry is less than it was 10 years ago?
Yeah, and we're also trying to always just create interesting content and keep it cool. And we've seen budgets where they haven't been larger budgets, and we've had great content created, and sometimes it's the song. The song just takes off, and it may not have to do necessarily with the visual, but again, we can also have really cool visuals that weren't bigger budgets.
Great. Dirk, do you have anything to add in that vein?
I was just gonna say, I've worked with bigger artists that we've done videos on a really, really shoestring budget, and they've turned out phenomenally. It's just the vibe during the day was really good, and this piece of content that came out was just, much better than what you anticipated, and the editing was great, and it cost nothing. And we've had, I guess it was more of a content piece that's turned into a music video because it was done so well. But then there's also been times where you've had a massive budget and the video's been scrapped. So sometimes it's tough, but budgets are down overall, but sometimes you can do a lot with a little. But it's always nice having those massive budgets for certain projects and artists. It just depends on where the artist is at in their career as well, and what you're given for that.
Excellent.
Great. I have a question for Crispin. So a question from Dakota in the chat room. She says, is there any advice about releasing music videos during this time, meaning during COVID? She has a video for a new band that was shot before COVID, and it's pretty funky, and I'm assuming she's talking about in terms of just strategy. Is there a different kind of strategy for releasing videos now versus pre-COVID? And if so, how are you tackling that?
It's like the Wild West out here. I have no idea what to do with anything right now. How could you? It's hard to plan when nothing is planned right now. I remember when COVID first started, I was like, cool, we just got to push pause for a month, then we'll get back on track. We're gonna be fine, guys. No stress. And it was 2 months, and the emergency was pushed back. People were talking about multiple years. So I think there's kind of two mindsets going right now. One is let's push pause and see what happens when this blows over. I'm currently of the mindset of like staying ahead of stuff. So like when live stream stuff started happening, I pivoted really quick to get all the equipment my artists needed to get streaming in like HD and do all that stuff. And in the same way, I'm kind of testing the waters on some releases coming up to see what the traction is like on things, what tactics with release strategies will work. It's hard to say if it's a good idea or not right now. I mean, maybe some of the other industry folks who've gone through releases recently would have better insight, but I think it's kind of like I'm just gonna see what happens with a B single, see if it gets traction, see if the videos get viewers, and sort of take that info in and go with it. But it's hard to make plans right now. You don't have the tour to support the release. You don't have the in-person interviews at the show. You don't have the radio campaigns when you're on the road, and you don't have. So it's weird, but it's totally doable. There's a lot of opportunity out there right now. So just be creative with your perspective. Try and set schedules and stay firm with them. Don't flinch. That's all I can do right now. So I don't know what you guys are doing at the other labels, but that's kind of how I've been approaching things. I've got some of the main focus singles that I have coming up, I'm sort of hesitating on a little bit because I don't know if it's the best time right now, but yeah, I don't know. The bottom line for that question is I have no idea. Do your best. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Anybody else, Cara or Kelly or Dirk, do you guys have any perspective on, if you have a finished piece, like you have a finished video, is now the time to hold back, or is now the time to put it out because you've got everybody sitting at home looking for content potentially?
Well, I was going to say, we've got a couple of singles coming down the pipe for our artists, and yes, there's a couple of videos that we've had to push, but we've also been able to shoot one, and we're shooting another one, and it's just come down to the artist working with the director fleshing out that treatment and finding a creative way of getting it shot. We've been lucky enough, one of our artists, we could get it shot at their home, but the director was not in the home, outside the house, so basically remotely directing. We have another one where we're going to have an artist shoot a video at her house. Her brother's going to be able to shoot it, and again, the director is going to be remote and helping from that perspective. He's been creating the shot lists. He's been super involved in all the creative, so he's been really involved. We've just had to work around it and find creative ways to get it done and still be able to create a piece of content that we feel good about, that feels like it matches the branding of the artist, and still put it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're still putting out, like, we're going as planned. We've had a lot of discussions with publicists and like how it's going for them, and getting a lot of like, they're looking for content that isn't about COVID. They want new music, and like every other day I'll see an article being like, don't hold up putting out your music. And then like, so I think it's like, you just got to go, because you can't plan right now. We're going to be in this for a while. There's going to be no touring for a while. How do we get people to do shows? Everyone's already thinking about live streaming. Like, there was an article today on Billboard about Live Nation doing concerts from their people's cars so they can go to like a drive-in like show. There's going to be all kinds of things. So you can't put it on hold because you'll be waiting till next September. So it's like, okay, we're putting it out. How are we going to get the best of this? Premieres for videos are much harder now than they were before. Like the last few releases, no premieres. I got a premiere for that one with the lips on the horror films on a horror blog, because like, so it is like, there's some things that are better. Like, I found that actually some of our releases are doing better because of it, and some of them are doing worse. But if you wait, you're going to be waiting literally until next summer or September to put music out. And it's like, people are at home listening, and every time I get a report, streams is going up and up and up. Like, it dropped at the beginning because everyone was in like panic mode, and I can't listen to music the same way because my brain is just like, I want to listen to like yoga music because I can't focus. And now people are like, okay, we're home, we're here for a while, we're going to start listening again. And so every week streaming is going back up, and like videos are definitely going up and up and up all the time. So it's like sitting on it's just kind of a waste. You just have to change how you've done it. And I mean, if anyone can adapt it to the music industry, we've had to do it so many times. It's just, we should do it now rather than waiting 6 months and being like, oh shoot, should have put stuff out. Like I saw Lady Gaga was going to pull her release, and she was like, we're going to wait, I'm going to pull it. And then I saw it's coming out like 2 weeks from now, because I guess she realized like, can't wait 2 years, like gotta get your stuff out. So that's where we're at.
Amazing.
Uh,
Should I keep going with questions there, Jared?
Yeah, maybe we'll try to fit one more question in before we wrap it up. If I'm sure some of our panelists need to get going, but maybe we can
Sure.
keep one more in.
Oh, okay. I got to pick a good one then. So let's end on a high here. And I know there's a couple other questions here, guys, and I'll try and post them on the Facebook group and see if we can get them answered there for people, for the ones that we haven't gotten to. From Angelica, she's asking, she would like to hear some titles of the most unique creative projects coming out of Toronto, Canada, both pre and during COVID, that made you proud to represent the industry. So this is kind of open to everyone. So maybe we'll go through somebody who hasn't.
Favorite videos. Why don't we start? Peter, what's your favorite, most unique video that you've seen in the last little while?
I really like the one that Jeremy did. I think it was the first one that I saw that was on Zoom. And it was really clever with a lot of good choreography. I forget the artist, which is not a good thing, I suppose. And I forget the title of the song, which is not a good thing, I suppose. But I know Jeremy directed it, and it was really rad.
Jeremy
Alon. Yeah.
Nice. And it was a Zoom video.
Yeah. If anyone knows the title, feel free to jump in.
I think it's Thao is the artist, or Tao.
Yeah. Tao. Right. Yeah.
All right. If anyone has the name of that, post it in the chat.
I'll put the link.
Oh, there's a link. Great. Nice. Anyone else? Videos you saw that blew your mind?
Pre-COVID, I was talking today with I love your Peter's Saint Nobody video for Jessie Reyez. That one makes me so emotional every time.
Peter killing it.
Yeah, and Sebastian produced a really cool one for what's his name? But the Virtuous Circle. Who's the artist?
Jordan Clausen.
Oh, it's so good. Go check it out.
I love that video. It's amazing.
So, but I think all the Prison Prize. I don't know if the Jessie one was represented in Prison Prize this year, but Prison Prize isn't happening in person this year. But they champion a lot of really cool videos that always make me inspired. Any of the top 10 this year.
There's a really good video that Glass Animals just put out called Dreamland, where the director and the production team just like shipped all of the expensive equipment to the singer's house and made him build his own like IKEA style music video and had to film it all himself over Zoom. But they gave him all the tools, all the lighting. He set down all the track. He had to like bring it up 4 flights of stairs. It's pretty funny. Kind of cruel to watch actually, but and the BTS of that is in the video, so it's kind of self-reflective in a way. I'll post a link to that too.
Very nice. Well, there you go. Go check out those videos immediately. There's a link to the one that Peter mentioned in the chat. And I just want to say this has been incredibly informative, and I want to thank all the panelists for coming out. I think that the We Direct music videos, people will stick around for another 10-15 as things are shutting down, just to go through some of the chat questions and go over some of the ideas that are popping up as to what We Direct music videos can do for you, and what we can do to help make everything work smoother on both the label side and from the music video side, and the things we can do going forward. But I just want to thank all the panelists, but also everybody who tuned in. This is sort of one of many things that we hope to be doing going forward. I think that we've been operating in the dark for a long time as music video makers in Canada, and having a community that is kind of open and transparent, where everybody can help each other out. And it's not, one of the things we've noticed is that in the United States, there is a bit of a division between what the artists and the labels and the people making the videos, And I think one thing we've noticed really quickly is that we don't have that here. There isn't, the industry is not shut off and closed off, and we're not on opposing teams. We're all very much on the same team, and that is trying to make really, really great stuff, and make sure that everyone is paid properly and doesn't have to work absolutely insane hours or ruin their life to do it. And I think that that's an achievable goal, especially given the fact that we can all come together like this, and we'll continue to. There's a lot more to discuss, and we'll get to it all in due time. We'll do more of these things, hopefully not over Zoom forever. But in the meantime, a big thank you to the panelists, and a big thank you to Seb and Alon and Emma for helping figure out how on earth we actually do this. And then this is also, hopefully if this all worked, it's been recorded, so we'll have a posting if you want to share it, or you thought something was interesting that you wanted to share with somebody who couldn't make it to this today. And where will that be posted?
Maybe YouTube, if I can figure out how to do it. Yay!
Right. All right. Like I said, we'll stick around for another 10-15, but thank you again to the panelists. We could not have done this without you. We appreciate your insight, and
thank you so much.
And we will continue to keep you posted as to when there's new and exciting things going on from our end.
Thanks for doing this, guys. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
Everyone.
Woo. Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 And then I'm going to keep recording just to, if we do want to get to some of these other questions, because there's some specifically directed at We Direct music videos as well. So I'll just keep this rolling. Bye, Michaela. Thank you. Love you.
Thank you, Michaela.
Maybe Peter, if you want to stick around, because there's a question about directors as well.
I'll stick around. Let me just.
Yeah, let me get. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. No worries. So maybe I'll ask.
There's a question that I noticed from Ryan in the chat where it said that just regarding the 10K ceiling for up and coming directors and the struggle there and the talk of mentorship within the community. And I know for us at We Direct Music Videos, one of the whole reasons why we got excited about the idea of having something like this community is because there wasn't a lot of discussion. People who had a lot of success making music videos tended to move on in their careers to features and commercials and things and make less music videos, and sort of fell out of touch with the community. At least that's something I've noticed, and I've certainly been feeling myself, is that I make less music videos now, which means I don't meet as many up and coming music video directors, and I can't share what I've learned with the community. So that's sort of the whole idea of this whole thing. I mean, you can also weigh in on that too, but I think that the idea of having a community that does share resources, things like writing treatments and developing better relationships with labels and where to find funding, and even lobbying for funding on behalf of artists and directors, is something that it would be nice to have a central hub for. So that's exactly what we're trying to do. And also, go ahead, Emma.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, for anyone who is a new director, there is already a lot of resources by the We Direct Music Videos, just mostly US ones. So if you didn't know about it, you can go to the WeDirectMusicVideos.com site, and there's a whole treatment resource of like different treatments, so you can see videos that got made and the treatments and how they looked, which is really helpful, I think, if you're just learning how to put things together. There's also a Reddit page for We Direct Music Videos where you can like ask questions, as well as our Facebook too. So if there's anything that you don't know what to do, there's a lot of resources. The other thing that they have on the We Direct Music Videos page right now is a resource for any film festivals that have music video sections in them. So if you want to put your video into a festival, you can do that and learn all those ones there too. And hopefully soon there'll also be contract advice available for download as well, so that you can like download some plug and play contracts.
Yeah, and also don't ignore Prism Prize, and they have been hosting in Toronto a number of really great workshops, bringing in directors to talk about treatment writing and putting together resources for producers, directors, DOPs, that kind of thing. And so hopefully, I mean, I'm sure that we'll hopefully be able to do some things with them in the future. That's sort of a long-term goal, and pool resources and offer so that we're kind of using the best of our resources combined. Go ahead, Alon.
There's just I was gonna move on to a question that maybe Peter and Emma can weigh in on, and I can too, because I think I have some perspective on this. Also, Joel Bertford, who I believe is still on with us. Joel was asking about our thoughts on moving to LA versus staying in Canada. And I know this is an interesting question because Emma is in LA. Peter kind of goes back and forth. And then I mostly operate out of Canada, but every once in a while shoot in LA as well. And I'll answer it first and then I'll jump to you guys. But my feeling is that I don't think that, I think gone are the days where you kind of had to, if you wanted to sort of advance, especially in music videos. Like, I don't think you need to be in LA to do music videos. It just doesn't, I think that, especially during COVID, we've noticed that things can be done remotely, but before that even, I think there's a larger emphasis being put on sort of looking for talent all over the world and not necessarily focusing on just local talent. And sometimes it's even sexier to bring in a director from another country or whatever. So my experience has always been like, as long as you have a presence in LA, you have a rep out there, or you have some contacts out there, I definitely think it's beneficial to go out there and make those connections. But I don't know about moving there necessarily. Like, I worry when people start talking about it in those terms, because you're talking about your entire life, uprooting your life and moving somewhere else to do something that I don't know if you necessarily have to physically move in order to do today. If you asked me like 20 years ago, I feel like the answer would be different, but that's my perspective. I've been able to keep fairly busy doing work out there without having to live there. But maybe Emma, you want to jump in, because you did end up.
I don't think you have to live in the US. I think that you can't. We're just a smaller country. We don't have the same population. We're really spread out. I think you have to look at the States or the world for work outside of Canada. Your career, no matter what you do. If you're in film, whether that's TV or anything, you're going to probably have to source some stuff. I don't think you have to live in the States. I think it's helpful to crack that nut, I guess, if with the opportunity there, but I don't think you have to. I think that it's just Canada it's got its limits, but that's just because we're a little bit smaller, my opinion.
Fair enough. Peter, you have any thoughts on that?
I was gonna move to LA before COVID, and then after COVID, I'm not touching America with like a 12-foot, never mind like 2-meter pole.
Wow, this is breaking news.
I
Do
mean,
your reps know?
What?
Reps
Yeah, my reps are happy, at least on the management side, because from what I've understood from the film and TV departments, and even some of the labels, I guess, is Canada's probably going to be faster in terms of getting back on set than America is. So I think that's kind of changed the landscape considerably, especially when it comes to television shoots. And then the ability to travel is just going to be way harder. But, prior to COVID, I definitely think there's a ceiling in Canada, and there's something to be said being in the industry in the United States, being in LA, and then sort of like mingling in a way where like word of mouth kind of spreads. One of the important things that people don't realize is like, I think the industry likes to talk about how a director works. And so they like to see it happen. And then when you're on the ground doing it, like that kind of word of mouth spreads around. And that's one of the benefits that I don't think you get if you're not living there. And that's certainly true of like music videos and commercials too.
Is there something to be said about the fact that we're in a bit of a bubble here in Canada, though, creatively, the fact that, in LA, there's sort of, it seems to be a lot of pressure to level up. Whereas I find that artists that work here, takes a Colin Medley, for example, like somebody who's interested in making videos at a smaller budget, level, I mean, I think enjoys small projects for local artists, for smaller artists, and continues to work and make good work here, but isn't necessarily trying to achieve the $50,000 budget. I mean, really, I'm sure a lot of people would love to have the larger budget as well. But I think that there's also something to be said about being in a vacuum and not getting caught up in the whirlwind of like feeling like you need to be working with such and such an artist to be a little bit more tapped into the music scene. Is there any benefit there?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's totally in line with sort of what you want to do as a goal. You know, like if anybody watching this wants to do like the next big, you know, Dua Lipa video or whatever, then, you know, LA is probably the better place to go to. But if you do want to do something a little bit more artistic, you're probably going to end up with more freedom and less oversight in Canada. I find that LA is very much into the business, but that's not to say that there isn't a core pocket of very artistic, creative creators down there. So I think you just kind of have to navigate that yourself and see if it's worth it.
Kathleen is asking, oh, sorry, were you going to read that question?
No, go ahead. We should move on.
Kathleen is asking, what's your best advice for finding mentorship if you're just coming out of film school and want to eventually be a music video director? And before I let you guys answer, I just want to say, Kathleen, don't try to eventually be a music video director. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I mean, just don't limit yourself to that, because that in and of itself is a very small piece of filmmaking that is, I don't know anyone currently that's only doing that. So, I don't know anybody who defines themselves as simply a music video director. So that's the one thing I would say, because I know it sounds silly, but a lot of people coming out of school don't realize that. I know that when I was coming out of school, I was just like, music video, I want to be a music video director. And I didn't know that was like not a realistic thing that one, unless you're like, I don't even think when I was coming out of school if anybody was just doing music videos. But I'll let you guys answer how would you go about finding mentorship if you're just coming out of film school?
I'd say you can ask anyone. I've never said no to anyone who wanted to come to shadow or PA on a film set of mine to learn. And I think that, I don't know about you guys, I've never said no to that. I think also that's exactly how I learned. Music videos are extremely under budgeted, so there's always need for someone to come out and like help out for the most part too. So if you can make yourself useful on set, you can shadow, and you're gonna like immediately be promoted to like the head of the art department probably on your first day, because that's kind of the situation, or whatever. Or you're like suddenly the, I don't know, second AC because we're understaffed and undercrewed. So you can really just get out there. But I just email anyone. I don't think anyone's going to be adverse to having someone come out. Peter?
Yeah. Also, we all clearly like to talk, so you just email any of us, and we'll just give you. Nobody's ever asked me for advice, and I've ever been like, I'm just going to ignore this person and not going to talk for like 10 hours.
Yeah, most people get way too long of an email from me if they ever ask about, you know, anything about emerging or getting into the industry. It is very funny though. Often a lot of the sets are so small, it is difficult to find people to actually come out. But I would also say that, or rather sometimes it's like, you know, when you have a crew of 3, it is difficult to have, you know, for somebody to come and watch and learn anything, because you're just running around so manically like trying to get the shots in. But maybe there's a lesson there too. But I also think that I agree with you, Alon, in that like music videos have never been able to be the main, you know, thing that I've done, or the only thing that I've done. But I think that's a really good thing. The work that I've done with features and series and other, you know, art forms have really informed the music video work. And I think that it would be foolish to try to just only make music videos, simply because music videos are an artistic visual medium and they're really broad. And when you say music video, it usually means video for an established artist with a finished track. And right away, you're cutting off the possibility of all kinds of interesting creative work that you might be able to do in the area of short film or experimental. Or if you're attracted to music videos, you probably have something to say beyond just, you know, a performance video for a music artist you like. So it'd be worth just sort of trying to do as much as possible, because it will all, each field informs the other.
And I would even say that from like a financial level, it's probably best not to just be a music video director.
Oh, yeah.
I think I was talking to Carlos Lopez Estrada, and I was like, how many music video directors do you think make a living just from music videos in LA? And he was like, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4% at the very most. So it's always good to be like an editor as well, or like working on a series or writing, or, I mean, everybody has like a ton of side hustles. A lot of the guys like Dan, they all did VFX, and you did too, Alon, right?
Yeah, I still do some. I mean, I don't do VFX for other directors anymore as much, but I still have the studio which works on projects. But yeah, I was gonna say, if you can also like try really hard to have like rich parents and stuff, like really wealthy people around you, and then you don't have to worry about it. You can just do music video. We had a few more questions here. Some of these are directed more at record labels, so I'm just going to skip those just because we don't have the record label people on here. But do we want to touch a little bit on some of the comments here? I know, Jared, you were sort of tracking this because you had replied to somebody about we direct music videos lobbying on behalf of video creators in provincial and federal parliament as non-for-profits, and then talking about I think it was Liam who mentioned that he was wanting to see if We Direct Music Videos can support a different vision than other We Direct Music Videos worldwide. I think he says there's a fair enough argument in terms of ethos that supports the concept of creating Canadian content and building a sustainable industry that's recognized globally. I think the argument is there with the whole industry to back it, which I agree. I think that's kind of what we're trying to do. And I think we're trying to aggregate. Part of this conversation today is trying to aggregate all these voices and kind of building a case for the fact that there's a vibrant community here of creators, musicians, and Canadian culture that needs the support, needs the financial support in order to thrive, especially in the wake of much fact disappearing, but maybe furthermore with COVID-19 sort of adding another blow to it. I think maybe coming out of this, there is an opportunity for us to sort of come together and be that voice. It's really just a matter of us, getting. I think we don't want to do it prematurely. We don't want to go out there. There was talk of approaching YouTube, for example, and also the government for funding. Like, we don't want to do that without being armed with the most amount of ammunition that we can. So all of what we're doing right now is part of getting that voice together, if that makes sense. I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
Oh, definitely. I also think that it's not even a matter, at least in my mind, it's not even a matter of how do we position music videos to show the value they have to the larger film industry and arts and culture in Canada, in terms of, having a really strong showing as a country in terms of the visual creative work as well as music, because that's already happening. Like, music videos already are that. I know countless directors that have fed their success and their career, as well as producers, and even, all the way through VFX and cinematographers that really like honed their craft using music videos and loved making music videos, and probably would have continued to make music videos if they could. But that it's like the feeder of the industry that gets absolutely zero credit in terms of government funding. One of the things we touched on today is the fact that a lot of these funding bodies are broadly supporting the music business or the film industry, which is great. But if music videos got even a tiny fraction of the cultural funding that goes into those two communities, they would be thoroughly supported and punch, really, really far above their weight in terms of how much it sort of let creatives hone their skills. And also on the music side, there are countless Canadian artists who grew to prominence with really amazing videos that were funded by the government. And and those, you know, the budgets on those videos have shrunk, and yet our cultural funding has gone up. So the question is, you know, maybe the experiment of tying our cultural funding for music videos to broadcasters has failed, because our ability to control broadcasters no longer exists in the streaming world. So we have to find another avenue to get those heritage dollars into the hands of, you know, musicians and directors and producers, and
That's,
let them
that's something
level up.
I'd like to ask both you three and anyone here, because I see a lot of people in this group that are, you know, just Sean and Evan and Brock and Ben, who are all people who work in videos. But is there, if you could re-establish some of that money into something else at a fund, do you think it's got value to bringing something like Muchfact back that would give in equal parts to filmmaker and the artist is more of a collaborative fund, or is that not worth it? That's the question.
Isn't that what basically what RBC,
something like that, but that was funded by the Canadian Heritage Fund? Is that something that I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts if anyone has any.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Wait, question. So that's about funding both the filmmakers and then the artists, and then is that so that a filmmaker can have a budget for music videos as well? Is that my understanding?
I guess so.
Or a mirror of Muchfact, basically, is what you're saying, in a way that operates in a similar way.
Yeah, no, more of a bigger mirror of what Prism the MVP is. It's giving kind of, it's just at least taking the filmmakers into account in the award process.
Yeah, I mean, if they had the budget of Muchfact, that'd be amazing. I mean, the crazy thing is like I owe my entire career, I would say, to Muchfact and BravoFact, which were basically kind of the same funding body. Like 5 Films has development going on towards it, and that's a BravoFact short. And then like Sunreal's music videos were all Muchfact. And so a lot of his career, when I was on tour with him, most of his fans discover him on YouTube through his videos. So like the lasting impact of it is pretty crazy. And to have lost that, I just don't even know, you know, where my career would be without it. So I think it's definitely worth finding something like that. And if you want to model it after something like Muchfact, I think it's worth going towards who's making money from it, which would be a YouTube fund, some sort of Apple Music Canada fund, maybe a Spotify Canada fund, because I know they have their own vertical videos. But these are the people who have the money for it. But it's just a matter of trying to wrestle money out of their hands and convince them
We have to create a megazord of all of those companies. Like just a little bit of money from each of those companies that comes towards making music videos. Yeah, I mean, I think I have a slightly different perspective, only because like I'm in the same boat. I think I owe a lot to Muchfact, but I also remember at the height of me doing videos, I was I would always push for as much direct funding from the artist as possible. And the reason for that was always because I felt like if the artist or the label were the ones investing the money, they would be more responsible for the project. They would feel more responsible for the project. They wouldn't feel like we're just gambling with somebody else's money, if that makes sense, with the government's money. And I don't know, anecdotally, I can't say if I was right or wrong in that case, but I did really believe that once Muchfact went down, I thought in a weird way in my mind, it was like, oh, this is kind of a blessing, because now record labels and artists are going to be forced to figure out a way to still make videos. And I think I was just sort of not completely disappointed, but somewhat disappointed to see that, like, no, really, we just kind of just made less. We made less videos, and they were just not as, there's still like amazing work being done, but it just wasn't, you know, the quality of the production value at least came down a little bit. But then it also kind of gave rise to all these amazing new producers and new directors that came out that, you know, could work with those smaller budgets as well. So I don't know. I feel like it's, I do think that it's sort of proved to me that like we kind of need something like Muchfact. otherwise, because it's we can't just rely on the labels and the artists to sort of figure out how they're going, because
Yeah.
the
And
music video is such a small part of what they do, whereas it's kind of the big part of what we do, and so we have to somehow come to the table.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the idea that the labels would step up and sort of have to fill the void with their own dollars and cents and then be more invested. On paper, it makes sense, but my experience was the total opposite making videos. I found that when I was doing a MuchFact video, which was funded entirely by MuchFact, the labels were much more hands-off, which creatively I really enjoyed during the process of making it. And then if the video turned out great, they would hop back on board to really push it because the video was great and they wanted to push it for their artist. But when the label was heavily invested, they were much more nervous about how the money was being spent, which in my experience is not creatively, that could be more challenging. You're then having to sort of make a business argument for decisions you're making creatively, and that's really challenging. And so I think maybe there is like and also the labels just don't have the money is the other thing. They just don't have the money to step up with those big, with the cultural heritage dollars that they were, they're because most of their money is coming from the government anywhere, or in a lot of cases, half of their money.
If nothing else, I think this conversation today sort of showed me, sort of reinforced the idea that the record labels are sort of on our side when it comes to that stuff. They still need to get this content made. Their artists still need this. They're handcuffed with the amount of funding that they have. And so if we are going to be sort of championing this new funding somehow, it's good to have them sort of supporting our voice, I think, when we do end up kind of figuring out what that solution ends up being. I think it's good to have their support, as opposed to it just being, to answer Emma's original question, I do think that finding a system that takes into account both the artist and the label as well as the filmmaker, and then both of those coming together to both in terms of like figuring out what that next funding body is going to be, source is going to be, but also just in terms of the individual grants that would be given out. I think they should factor in both the artist and the label and the filmmaker.
Great.
And then
Connor had some interesting things to say in the chat just around the idea of looking for favors or with validation. I mean, that's one thing that I believe there were like grants that, like equipment grants that were tied to various funding awards that I've seen, but
there used to be a MuchFact truck at White's that you could get.
That's right.
MVP
yeah, because
help when you get an MVP, they give you some sort of stuff. But if you talk to someone like Sebastian too, who works in music videos regularly, and if you're producing stuff, the kind of deals that they're getting are not as good as kind of what we can just usually get on our own by having relationships and working with companies regularly that you trust. So
yeah, that's another big thing that we've found making music videos, is that's another reason that it's nice to not just be making music videos, is that if you're working with a company that's also making commercials or features or shows, you have relationships with gear houses where when you come to them and say, I'm making a $5,000 music video and we want to shoot on something good, most of those companies, if you already have a relationship, will give you a hell of a deal if you are working with them on other things, because they know you'll come back. Even when, like, and this was when we were really, really starting out, like early on, when we, had only maybe one big show, one big like actual paid gig a year already, because they were trying to build those relationships early. And they know that music video is code for emerging artists, and that these people will keep coming back to us when they have big budgets.
I had great luck with weed cookies being dropped off at White's as sort of a means to ply.
Oh, okay. So you can bribe them with weed. Got it.
If you can bake some weed cookies, maybe it helps.
Nice.
Oh man.
Hot tip.
I've been doing it wrong. I've been doing it so wrong my entire career.
Yeah, I haven't dropped off weed cookies to anybody.
Yeah. All right. Should we Yeah, I think the other questions we had were more aimed at labels, so I'm going to skip those. And I think we kind of touched on pretty much everything.
Yeah, that's great. Everybody, make sure before you go, do the survey if you haven't. Even if you're just a brand new emerging director, there's and that is on the Facebook page, right? The We Direct Music Video Canada.
Yep. Yeah, I'll post it again. I'll post the survey now that because we've had a few new additions. So I appreciate everybody who's been joining the Facebook group. That's great. And anybody who's showed up to this, really, really, really appreciate it.
And that is excellent. And then also stay tuned. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to keep doing things like this. As soon as we can resume in-person meetups, there was a really fun hangout in Toronto and one in Vancouver, which was really just like drinks and going to a bar. And I think that alone is incredibly valuable because the connections between people who make music videos is what's going to make this kind of community possible. I think that, we can have as many lectures and roundtables and discussions like this as we want, but until you actually have a few in-person relationships, it's very difficult to move things forward. And it's nice to have somebody that you can call when you have questions. And that's kind of the ultimate goal beyond just the actual high level, funding stuff.
Awesome.
So yes, thanks again. Thank you, Alon and Seb, for your hard work setting this up, and Peter and Emma and everybody for tuning in.
Yeah, I was also
Amazing.
going to say too, I'll put my own personal email. If anyone has any questions, you can just email me after.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll do the same. I'll put it into the chat box.
Oh, damn. We're giving out our
You don't have
contacts.
to. You don't have to.
You guys should put it to attendees and panelists. You just shared those with me. So just change the
Well,
two
that's all
to.
panelists.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why did I just do it full time?
Yeah.
There we go. So if anybody wants advice or just wants to chat about weed cookies, direct those to Emma. If anybody has hair tips, direct them at me.
Great. Copy those emails now if you want them, because they'll go away when the meeting ends, I believe.
Right. Yep. All right.
All right.
Great.
Thanks again.
Oh, and somebody just asked you to bring back Nirvana the band to the show too. So.
Hey, we're trying. We're trying. That's a long story. That's a panel unto itself.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
It's great seeing faces.
Thank you.
Talk soon. Bye.
Yeah.